Hey, what's up, y'all? It's your boy Daniel, and welcome back to the Black Evolution. And today, I'm gonna talk about one specific topic. We're gonna talk about Kamala Harris and what she's gonna do for the Black community. Let's get into it. So, before we go into this further, I have a great and honorable special guest. He's an entrepreneur, Mr. CEO of Kidd Klutch Productions. We got Tyler Robinson, aka Mr. Kidd Klutch. Introduce yourself, brother. What's up, brother?
Thank you, Daniel. I'm glad to be back on your show. That was a nice introduction.
You're welcome. You're welcome, man. Yeah, of course. You are a very special guest. You're one of the first guests of the Black Evolution. So let's talk about Kamala Harris. So recently, she's been nominated as the VP to Joe Biden when he's running for president. A lot of people have a lot of things to say about her. And I want to get your initial thoughts on her VP selection and what is she's going to do for the Black community.
I think it's a historical pick, and it's Black people and just everybody in the country should be proud of this, because this is the first time that a Black woman has ever been, Asian woman has ever been selected to be on a vice president or even major party ticket.
I definitely agree with you on that. I feel that when I initial thoughts, when I saw Kamala Harris on there, I will admit I was kind of skeptical because I really wanted Stacey Abrams to be on there, to be the VP, but I digress. That was just my personal pick. But in terms of what Kamala Harris has done for Black people, she is very much qualified as a lawyer. She's been in government before. She knows what she's doing. She knows who she has connections. She knows what she's talking about and everything. But the reason I was initially skeptical was because of her comments about when it comes to Black reparations. There was a video that she did during the primaries that she basically talked about when it comes to Black people and Black reparations. She says, it's not just about Black people, it's for all people. I'm like, okay, I understand the sentiment of that. But at the same time, too, you got to take into account that our people have been suffering and have been under oppression for 400 years. And so that's why the issue of reparations had come up. And so when you have that issue, you can't just be like, oh, all people are going to get into the reparations issue, when really clearly it's a racism issue and a Black issue. So you can't just be that. Why do you have to feel the need to include all people when you should answer the question of what you're going to do for Black people?
But here's the thing about the vice presidential ticket. She's not running as president anymore. She's running as vice president. So the president is going to ultimately have the final say so on that. Not her. She can be a voice in there and tell him, but she's not going to have the final decision on that. So we could put stuff into there, and of course on that too, you say Black reparations. If you plainly say this is what I want, that's what we demand, you can get it. But if you just sit there and say, what are you going to do for us? What are you going to do for us? What do you want?
So what you're saying is you want people to be specific with their demands. You can't just be like, oh, what you going to do? What you going to do for the Black community? What you going to do? What you going to do for the Black community? Like, what do you want? Be specific.
Because her interpretation, my interpretation, your interpretation, and somebody else's interpretation is going to more than likely be different. So you have to be specific so you can try to make everybody happy.
I understand that.
Meet in the middle.
I understand that because you have to be specific with your demands.
With reparations, you got to understand too, with reparations, it's not going to be something that's going to be done in a year or even month or 2 years. It's going to take probably a full term just to get the conversation and get it together, because it's a broad subject. Because it's how, when, who, and what you got to do.
But I feel that when people are talking about reparations, they are specifically talking about money. That's what it is. It's not about anything else like colleges, free college, or anything else. No, when people say reparations, they are telling you about the money the the $14.5 trillion that America owes the American descendants of slaves. That's what it's specifically talking about when it comes to reparations. Not about free colleges or education or anything else like that, but specifically about money. And so that's what people were asking, her about and other candidates about during the primaries about what you're going to do for reparations. That's what
I understand that part, but here's the question: how are you going to distribute that? What was it? You said 15 trillion.
It was 14.5 trillion to be precise.
14.5 trillion. So out of those 15 trillion, how do you distribute it? Who gets it? Who's qualified?
Well, I believe I told you who's qualified.
Who gets to make the decision? That's the thing too.
Oh, okay, yeah, that's true.
Because it's like this: each family and each person may have a different outlook on something. This person may want education. This person may want money. This person may want help with something.
I understand.
It's a broad subject. It's not just money.
I understand it when you're saying that, but at the end of the day, I'm saying the discussion surrounding reparations, I understand it's being talked about, but when people are getting down to specifics, the majority of them are talking about money, and specifically the $14.5 trillion that the United States government owes Black people for all the labor that we've done to build this country. Because we have, for 400 years, we worked this country, they worked us to death and everything else, and we were in slavery and we were in bondage, and all that free labor. And so that's where that number $14.5 trillion come from, is because all that free labor.
I understand the number, but this is what I was saying. How are you going to distribute it? Are you going to distribute it per person, per family, per this? And it's like this: who makes the decision on who gets what? That's the question I have. Like you say, you have a young child born into a family. Do they make the decision that, I want this amount of money, I want education, I want this, I want that? Or does their family? I think what needs to happen is that person turns 18 through 21, they should be able to make this decision for themselves, or what they acquire, or this person doesn't have to pay taxes for the rest of their life. It's broader than just money. Economics, education, socially, politically.
Yeah, I understand that. But what I'm saying is with the money, we can use that money, the reparations money, to build the Black businesses, to build the infrastructure, to build all these things that we need in order to have a successful, thriving, and great community. Now, in terms of how, let me go ahead. So in terms of how we're going to distribute the money, it will be going to the African American descendants of slaves, the people who come from the loins of slaves. So you would have to use Ancestry.com or other these DNA tests to test your DNA and to trace it back to your ancestor. And based off of that, and based off those calculations about how if you come from the loins of a slave, then therefore you'll be eligible for reparations.
I understand that. I agree with you on that. But this is what I'm asking. What is your specific? I'm not talking about everybody else. I'm saying, what do you want?
Okay. So in terms of specifically what I want when it comes to the Black reparations plan is very simple. Number one, Black people need to be consolidated for all the free labor that their ancestors did. So in order to do that, you need the $14.5 trillion. And this is specifically what I want. I want the $14.5 trillion to be funneled into the Black community, specifically for Black people, and distribute it and have it be distributed to the American descendants of slaves through Ancestry.com, what have you, and then take that money and funnel it into Black businesses, Black education, and everything else, teaching Black people how to do Black economics and what have you, so we can build the wealth and close the wealth gap, and also build many of our businesses to be thriving and great in our communities.
But here's the thing with that. I agree with you on that. But how much of it should go to all those things? How much of it should go to each place? And I got another question too with that. How long should it be distributed? That's the question. Should it be for a lifetime or should it be a one-time payment? Because these are the things people are not thinking about. We can all say we want this and that, but how, who, what, and where?
I understand that. That's very, yeah, we're getting down to the nitty gritty. We're getting down to nitty gritty. So I believe that it should be a lifetime of reparations. Let me tell you why. The reason being is for centuries now, the power structure that built this country had generational wealth. So because of the free labor that our ancestors did, they got generational wealth. They got wealth that's passed down from generation to generation to generation. With this reparations, all that money is going back to the people that it's owed to. So therefore, it should be generational wealth, but in the reverse way. Lifetime reparations from generation to generation to generation, because you need to create that generational wealth, because you have the wealth gap. So in order to close wealth gap, you need to have generational wealth. So black people need to begin the process of having generational wealth, because you got to remember, after the whole civil rights movement and the Jim Crow laws, everything else passed, that was 50 years ago. Black people are just getting started with acquiring generational wealth and trying to establish generational wealth. But with this reparations of a lifetime of $14.5 trillion going into the black community generation after generation after generation, we will be able to have great thriving black communities, great black businesses. All of it would be great because it's funneled into the community and it will be generational wealth.
But here's what I'm asking right now is, do you think it should go to each individual or should it just go for the communities and stuff? As far as like economically, do like, okay, we give you money to get your business going, or we give you this for school, or we give you this for the neighborhood. Are you saying in that mass distribution, in that type of way, or are you talking about individuals too?
It's a combination of both. Let me tell you.
How much do you think each individual should get? Do you think each individual should get the same amount, or more or less?
I believe that each individual should get, based off of their ancestry and based off of their heritage, if they have the pre-requirements or prerequisites for being an American descendant of slaves, it should go to each individual. And so because with each individual, that family, that community, that individual can distribute that money to his family and everything, and to that community, the overall community. And so each one should get a specific same amount, because we're creating generational wealth within that family, through that individual, through each individual. And so by doing that, you're creating more and more wealth for not only that individual, but for that family, and ultimately for the black community.
So here's how I see it. I see it depends on what their family status was before they were brought over in slavery. They should get that amount based off of that. Like I say, well, you have like you do now. You have the gap. I think it should be distributed. Okay, this person has. Let's say this person is probably let's say Jay-Z. He's a billionaire. Do you think he should get the same amount as the average Joe?
So if Jay-Z is a billionaire, as of currently right now, how did he acquire that wealth? Number one. Number two, is he an American descendant of slaves? Because in order for you to have reparations, you have to be an American descendant of slave. And let's say he does qualify. Based off of heritage alone, he should get the same amount as the average Joe, or as the average black person, because it's not about economic disparity. It's about heritage. It's about the American descendant of slaves being reconciled and recompensed. So based off of that qualification of American descendant of slaves, I would have to say yes. based off
So
of my
how
qualifications.
how much do you think he should get?
The
What's the
same.
number?
Okay, so let's say it's between, we split it off. It's 14.5 trillion overall, and we'll split it off. Let's say I'm just gonna throw out a number, 200,000, because you're splitting off into many individuals. So Jay-Z should get 200,000, and then the average person should get 200,000 because you're splitting it off.
Wealth gap. You want to see why? Because Bill Gates is worth $100 billion. Jay-Z would never catch him. It don't matter if you give him 200,000. It's not gonna be enough. Because we're saying we're trying to close the wealth gap between whites and blacks. There still won't close. There still won't be enough to close.
Yeah, that's true. That is true. You all right on that.
I'm getting at, and that's it too. With the lowest white, how low the average Joe black and average Joe white, he won't be able to catch him either if you give him 200,000, because there's still gonna be a disparity. So do you think they should pay less tax or no tax at all?
Are you talking about the black individual versus the white individual? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Because you were really specific. Okay. So the average black man versus the average white man. So if it's based off the wealth gap, because we're trying to close wealth gap. We're trying to close the wealth gap.
I'm doing it from each category.
Yeah.
From the upper top 1%
to the lower.
To the 99.
Yeah.
99, the middle.
Yeah.
And the working.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to each level.
Yep, I understand that. So when it comes to the average Joe or the average black man versus the average white man, by default, according to economic study, the average white man makes significantly more than the average black man.
Sure.
So because of that, and because we're trying to close the wealth gap, the average black man should pay less taxes than the average white man. Let me tell you why. Because if a person makes less than the other person, that is a significant wealth gap. So we're trying to close it off. So we're trying to make it as much, we're trying to make the reparations bill as much easy as possible, so that they can eventually close the wealth gap and stop and have equal pay and have it should be equality ultimately between a black man and a white man. But I'm saying in terms of economically, the black man should pay. The average black man should pay less than the average white man because of the economic gap.
And you brought up a point another point that just got in my head, but I had to disagree with you on this point. You can't go by the what was it? What was I gonna say with that? I'm thinking. Oh, yes, salary. Based on salaries, are you just going to do that with salaries too? Increase their salaries to the way they're equal? I'm not talking about the reparations. I'm just talking about salary.
In terms of salary, if it's based off of salary, not only salary but economic conditions, meaning if the average black man lives in a crappy neighborhood, we'll just call it the hood for simple terms, and the average white man lives in a very much middle class home, that's going to be a problem, because not only is the salary bad, but the living conditions. So because the living conditions are bad, they won't be afforded or be given the economic opportunities to build their wealth and to be very successful. So in order to close the wealth gap, in order to close this, you would need to not only help in terms of salary level, but in terms of condition level.
I got my point now. Here's where I had to disagree with you on, where you said it, make it easy as possible. You don't want to make it easy, because if you make it easy, it's still going to be stuff left out of it that may create disparity.
Yeah.
You want to make it as hard as possible and make it well thought out, because if you do that, it's going to be hard to dismantle it.
Understandable. I agree with you on that. I agree with you on that. 100%.
And then I want to get back to the disparities. As far as the reparations, I don't think that should be money paid in like a salary. I think that should be like asset to accumulate the wealth, like home ownership and all that.
Yeah.
Business ownership or just assets sitting around that you really aren't to use. But I think with salaries, they should level that off, but they shouldn't have to pay as much tax. For, let's say, 2 generations, 3 generations from that family. Well, maybe 4, if we could level it off. Because I look at it like this. The richest white men in the world, wealthiest white men in the world, they worth 100 and such billion. So that's going to take at least 4 generations to catch that for the richest black person in the world. So I think what you have to do too is like what we do with our, even with the HBCUs, we have to put all our resources in that too.
Yeah.
To where they don't have to pay taxes on anything. Because they won't ever catch up to like Ivy League schools and stuff.
Yeah.
That sort of thing where Ivy League schools made so much money they had to start donating everywhere. I think what Ivy League schools need to do, they need to donate to HBCU for the rest of, I guess, what do you think, like 5 generations?
Yeah.
Because the average HBCU probably makes millions of dollars, but those Ivy League schools, they make $1 billion. So for HBCUs to catch up, money has to be invested there too.
Yeah, I understand that, but at the same time
and
too,
you gotta rebuild those neighborhoods the HBCUs are in.
Yeah, I understand that, but at the same time too, I have a slight disagreement with you in terms of how it's going to be distributed, because I believe it should go to the individual, so that individual can further help his family first, and then also put his resources into the community, so that the community can be thriving. So you can put money into HBCUs, you can put money into black businesses, you can put money into the educational system as a whole, and to create all these different types of businesses, from restaurants to hospitals to banks, because there's also, in terms of black wealth, it comes with the black banks. There's very little black banks, and so because of that, you need to have more black banks. So that's why I say it can go to individuals, because these individuals can also they can help their families, it can help their overall living conditions improve, and also it can help the communities as a whole, because also I want to bring up this issue. Because of the wealth gap, you have 2 different types of living conditions. You have some rich white people living in these super duper mansions and high middle class neighborhoods. Some of the average black people live in these lower conditions. So because of that, you need to fix the wealth gap by going to the individuals, so that they can help their families, help their living conditions, so that way they can be afforded the opportunity to build the black wealth, go into the black banks, go into the education system, like HBCUs, et cetera, et cetera. And so that's why I slightly disagree with you in terms of like where it should go. You say you believe it should go in assets. I agree with you, but I disagree with you, because sometimes with assets, you may not get it immediately or all the way. That's why if you take it put it to the individual's hands.
But what I mean by assets is like, okay, I can use it as an asset. I feel like each individual should be able to choose what they want. It should be a variety of stuff.
Yeah.
In that bill, so where each individual and each family, they can choose. Well, I want to do this. Because this individual may not want to go to college, or this individual may not want to start a business, or this individual may not want to do this way. So this individual may want money up front. This individual may want money over a lifetime. This individual may not want to pay as much taxes to get all their money. This individual may want to put this in an asset to build it over time.
Yep.
So it's just...
So like you said, it does depend on the individual. So going back to what we were talking about with the whole Kamala Harris and the black community and black reparations, what have you, because we kind of ended and we talked about black reparations because we had slight disagreements. But going back on topic, what do you feel that Kamala Harris overall is going to do in terms of her VP status to get either reparations or what she's going to do in general for the black community? Because there's a variety of issues. There is racism. There's all this other stuff.
I didn't mean to cut you off, but this is what I want to say with that. I don't think reparations is going to be on the top of the list. I think that would be.
Why is that?
That would go bit into the term because it's something you're going to have to put a lot of focus on. It's something you don't want to do early on because it's a pandemic and all that. So I think what it's going to get is police reform. That's going to be the first thing. Then I think climate change.
Mm-hmm. And also, it's going to be, like you said, it's a pandemic. So they have the police reform because pandemic first, police reform, and then the climate change.
Yeah.
But
I think if we tackle those down, we're good.
Yep.
Then we can go into I think 2 years into her vice president's term, she'll be able to start focusing on reparations.
Mm-hmm. So do you believe that, can you agree that the black vote has been taken for granted by the Democratic Party?
I think it has, but I think it's been taken for granted for both parties. I can't really say it's Democrat.
Yeah, but I'm talking the majority. Let's be real here. The majority of our people, black people, vote Democrat.
That's the truth.
And because of that, where we are funneling our loyalty and our voting power towards them. And so over the years, we've seen very little changes in terms of the black community. Do you believe that, that's why I ask you again, do you believe that the black vote has been taken for granted by the Democratic Party? And the second question is, what Kamala Harris being VP, what do you think she's going to do in terms of action that she's going to do for the black community and everything else? I know she's VP, so she's taking a position, but given to the account that she is technically the advisor or the VP or vice president, she can influence Joe Biden to make certain changes. Do you believe that with her record as a lawyer and her being a prosecutor, prosecuting black people going to jail, do you believe that she would be able to make the right or correct decision of influencing Joe Biden to go in our favor or go in our disfavor?
I think she will because she's the person in the primaries that pushed Joe Biden to take a lot of these positions on racial relations in the black community. I watched all those debates they had. She really pushed them on a lot of stuff.
Yeah, I watched the debates too, but at the same time too, I'm going based off of Kamala Harris's track record. Her track record is she was a prosecutor. She prosecuted.
First question first. And the Democratic Party taking black people votes for granted.
Yes, I do believe that black people have been taken for granted by the Democratic Party. And so what I believe that with Kamala Harris in there, I'm kind of on a fence because I want results. I'm not going based on forget about your AKA legacy, forget about all that. I don't care about that. What I care about results and what you are going to do while you're a VP to hold Joe Biden accountable and everything else. That's what I care about.
I agree. But here's what I want to answer your first question. The first question, I feel they take their votes for granted because they really haven't been serious over the years with the votes.
What do you mean by that? They haven't been serious.
They haven't pushed them. They haven't demanded anything, really. They just said, we're going to vote for you. Without demand. This year is probably the first time in years they've demanded something. But also, too, if you gotta be in the game, too. You can't sit there and say, well, I'm not going to vote. I'm mad at this. I don't like this and that. It's not going to change. It's going to get worse.
I have to agree with you. I've seen some people, particularly some of our own people, Be like, I'm not going to vote because my vote don't matter. I'm like, that's an ignorant statement because your vote does matter, because your vote matters because you can influence them. Because if you show that you're voting for something, you're voting for them, they are obligated to help you. Just because if they vote for you, if you vote for them, you put them in a position of power. So that loyalty is supposed to be done in return. But my thing is with the whole black vote and Democratic Party, we voted for them. But I feel like in some ways our vote hasn't been returned. Our loyalty hasn't been returned. They just taken over for granted, and that's a problem.
I agree with you, but it's like this: how can they take you serious if you're not putting up a serious argument with it? Not you personally, but okay, I'm gonna go vote for you, but I'm not gonna do anything else. What is that doing?
Mm-hmm.
That's just like I say you're running. I'm gonna vote for you, but I'm not telling you what I want.
Yeah.
And you're sitting there. I'm getting mad at you saying you're not doing it for the people. You're not doing this and that, and you're unaware of what's going on.
Yeah. Because
like, what did I do?
Yeah, because when it comes
so wrong.
Yep.
Because you didn't push me, you didn't tell me.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't make it important enough.
Mm-hmm. I agree with you on that. But in terms of like the black vote and everything else, you're right. This is one of the first times that I've seen that people are actually demanding a black agenda. Yeah, shows like the Breakfast Club with Charlamagne the God demanding a black agenda. Yep, since Martin Luther King. But they actually demanded something.
They demanded something.
Yeah. And then we just kept voting. I'm just like, no, you need to be specific. What do you want? And so this is the first time I've seen in a long time that people are actually demanding for a black agenda. All these shows like the Breakfast Club, everybody talking about the black agenda, the black agenda, the black agenda. What you gonna do for black people? What you gonna do? What you gonna do? And so now that that's being in the conversation, now we're getting somewhere. Because now you're actually, like you said, demanding what you want in the community.
Yeah.
And so I believe.
I also think our people lost their way.
Yeah, most definitely. Most definitely they have lost their way.
Because I think it's the Obama effect. They thought just because Obama did it, they
exactly. Yes.
They got lazy and complacent.
Mm-hmm. And that's the problem. Because they just assumed, oh, he's a black president. We're good now. All we struggled and everything else, we good because he's in office. He can do all this stuff. But if you don't tell him what he want, then he's not going to do anything. And also with the gays, look, for example, I'm sorry to cut you off, but look at the example with the gays. They demanded what they wanted, and Obama put things in place with DACA. The immigrants demanded what they wanted, and look what they got.
A lot of people understand he was against that years ago. They pushed him and changed his position.
Yep. But I'm talking about demanding what you want. What we're talking about, demanding what you want. Because the gays demanded the right to get married to a same-sex marriage, they got it. Because DACA demanded, or the immigrants demanded DACA or all these programs, they got it. Black people have to do the exact same thing that other communities have done before. We got to demand and hold our politicians accountable. Here's what we want. Here's an agenda. Here's like a 10-point plan or a 20-point plan or what have you of what we want. Here's our demands, and just, hey, get this done. If you don't get this done, we're not going to vote for you. Because we have to start demanding tangibles, something tangible to the black community.
And two, you have to form hacks too.
Exactly.
To fund these candidates. That's when they'll start taking you serious. Because look at these lobbyists. If they call these public officials right now, they get the phone call and they pick it up.
Mm-hmm.
I remember it was this one black guy. He was a millionaire, and he gave Bill Clinton $1 million.
Mm-hmm.
And anytime he called Bill Clinton picked the phone up when he was president.
Mm-hmm.
The reason for that, because he took him serious. See, dude, I put you in there and I take you out of there.
Yeah.
Anyway, they're taking the black vote for granted because they say, okay, they're gonna keep voting us in. They're gonna keep voting us.
It don't matter what we do to them, they're gonna keep voting for us.
And two, they say this: they have nothing to lose. If if they don't vote for us, the conditions gonna get worse.
Mm-hmm.
So you kind of in a lose-lose situation.
Yeah. So.
Because they're gonna say the other side is not presenting a good argument.
Yeah. And most of the time they're right, because most of the other side is not presenting a good argument because they're racist. Look at what their policies, look at what they're doing. But that's why we vote Democrats. But my thing is, if the Democrats are not doing anything, we have to demand them to do something. Hey,
exactly.
You need to do this. You need to do that. Here's a 10-point plan. Here's what we want done. Get it done, or we're not voting. Start demanding tangibles, and stop just voting just to vote. Don't just vote just to vote. Be an informed voter.
I agree. It's good that you said that, because I feel a lot of people, they only vote when they vote. Black people, they vote for the federal elections, but they don't vote for the state and local.
Exactly. That's another thing we're about to go into, because of federal and state elections, because those elections are where you live at. They're where you live at. You need to know who your council members are. You need to know who your mayor is. Because we know who our mayor is, Mayor Lyles. She's our mayor. First black female mayor. To be specific. In Charlotte. To be specific. But as I'm saying, you need to know who your local elections are. You need to know who to vote for. Be an informed voter. Don't just vote just to vote. Look at their policies. Look at what they're doing, and see if they align with your beliefs. And if they don't,
donate money to their campaign.
Yeah, donate money to the campaign and everything else. If they don't vote for them. Yep. We have to know how to use our voting power. That's the problem. We just vote. Just to vote. Just to vote. Just to vote. I'm like, no, we can't be doing that. Use our voting power. Use our voting power. Take advantage of our voting power.
The problem with our people too, black people, they don't understand how much power they have.
Mm-hmm.
It's the citizens that have the power, but the politicians have the power if you don't empower them.
Mm-hmm.
Your vote is your power. And right now, it's Donald Trump is trying to take out your vote.
Mm-hmm.
He's closing, defunding the postal office.
Yeah.
So people won't vote. And there's still people, they still falling for the tricks. They won't say, I ain't gonna vote, my vote don't count.
Yeah, it's like, they're still falling for that.
Why would they do all that?
Yeah. If it wouldn't count, if your vote meant nothing, why is he closing the postal? Why is he doing all these things? Yeah. Unless your vote did matter. Because his vote, most likely your vote does matter, because he's doing all this stuff. He wouldn't do all this stuff. He wouldn't go out of his way to do this if your vote didn't matter. That's what I'm trying to tell people. But some of our people, they are not politically educated. Need to be politically educated.
Look at the groups too that funding never goes away. NRA.
Yeah.
The Jewish community and Planned Parenthood and gays. This stuff never gets pulled.
Mm-hmm.
You know why? Because they donating money. And they pushing them to not telling them, this is what we demand, this is what we want, this is what we're going to get.
Mm-hmm.
And look at these corporations, Amazon, Facebook. If they call and say they want this and that, they're going to get it.
Mm-hmm.
They have lobbyists on behalf of them.
Yep.
And that's what we got to do too. We got to get somebody that's competent that knows what they're talking about, the lobby on behalf of.
Yep. I agree with that.
Kanye West.
Yeah. I don't call him Kanye West. I call him Kanye West.
Yeah.
That's what I call him, because he don't know what the heck, he don't know what he's talking about. He's quote unquote falsely representing us, and that's a problem. We gotta stop having celebrities who don't know what they're talking about represent us.
Because we got a celebrity in the White House now.
Yeah. That's a problem now.
Because people, they so obsessed with it.
Mm-hmm.
He's the equivalency of Donald Trump.
Yep.
They have the same they morally bankrupt. They only care about his money.
Yep.
They care about nobody but themselves.
Yeah. And so you can't have that in office. We gotta know somebody who knows what they're talking about, who knows what they're doing, and who has experience.
And that's another thing too. Everybody gotta start being selfish and start thinking for we, not me.
Mm-hmm.
You do that, you can band together and get this stuff done.
Yep. I agree with that. So I feel like we pretty much covered everything in terms of.
I have something else I wanted to get into.
Okay, go ahead, brother.
People understand Congress, they make the laws. Well, the presidents and governors and mayors, all they do is sign and stuff.
Yeah, they can sign or veto or do an executive order. They can do an executive order.
Yeah, that's it. people. Those are the ones making the laws. And also, too, when you vote for the president, you vote for judges, too.
Mm-hmm.
Lifetime judges. And those people, you may not think about it, but those people, stuff that seems normal, they can take it away so quick.
Mm-hmm.
And you won't realize it. Mm-hmm. Right now, Donald Trump, he backed up the court with conservative and right-wing judges for 30, 40 years. They're young people. Mm-hmm. This election means something, too, because we have two Democratic judges that they're up in age. They're in their 80s. So if Donald Trump gets reelected, he gets a fourth Supreme Court appointment. Mm-hmm. Lifetime appointment. So that means you can lose your health care. They can turn the abortion law and change it around to pro-life. Police reform will be taken upon. Mm-hmm. Voting rights, everything.
Yeah, I agree with you on that.
And that's another thing on your locals too. When you vote for your mayors and stuff, your mayor appoints your police chief. Mm-hmm. The police chief hires all those police.
Yeah. That's why I did a podcast earlier about the black vote and the black vote spending power a few weeks ago, and how we need to have our own. It wasn't really a few weeks ago; it was a couple months ago. But the point was, our voting power matters. Our votes matter. We don't just vote just to vote. Be an informed voter. Know what you're talking about. Vote for your mayor. You vote for the correct mayor. The mayor votes for the sheriff, and the sheriff has all these police. So if you look at all these, New York, all these other places, most of them with the police brutality, most of them have Republicans as mayor. This mayor, that mayor hires a police chief, and the police chiefs, and all these hires all these policemen. And policemen are cracking down or doing all these Gestapo tactics. Then people wondering why. I'm like, well, who's in office? Who's the mayor of that city? You start to look at the pattern. You got to look at the pattern and see the connection. But
and it's just like, okay, let's go back to Kamala Harris.
Yeah.
When she was district attorney and attorney general, all the people she prosecuted, she wasn't wrong for prosecuting them. Mm-hmm. They need to be prosecuted.
Yeah.
The only thing I disagree with her on is when she prosecuted those people for truancy, not sending their kids to school.
Yeah.
I don't think they should have went and talked to them, see why. Mm-hmm. And made a way for the kids to go to school.
Yeah. So my question
poverty.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think that was really going after the poor people.
Mm-hmm. That was a means of going after the poor, and that's a problem too.
But the rest of the prosecutions and stuff she did, I don't really have a problem because they were rapists, child molesters, robbers, kidnappers, or
yeah. So my thing is, what I was going to go into is, in terms of Kamala Harris and her track record and everything else. A lot of people. What do you feel about the people who call Kamala Harris a coon and a Sambo and she ain't doing nothing and she's not really black and what do you think of those ignorant statements when people say that?
I think they're either ignorant, foolish, stupid, idiotic, or just uninformed. And they're listening to the wrong people.
Yeah.
That's another thing too. The media, they play a role in government too. You just don't know it.
Yeah.
Be careful what media outlets you watch.
Because they can influence you to do the wrong thing. Because I was watching something on the news the other day on MSNBC, how basically Fox News influenced all these crazy right wingers to believe a conspiracy theory. And I'm like, that's dangerous because QAnon, to believe that a conspiracy theory called QAnon and all that. And I'm like, you better watch what media you're listening to because also
it promotes this conspiracy theory saying that all the high people, the top Democratic people or top figures of the world, doesn't have to be politicians but celebrities, that they're holding sex trafficking rings for kids.
Yeah, I heard about that.
and it's making people go crazy, and they're shooting up innocent people.
Yeah.
Because they believe in it.
Yeah. And the media is spreading that too, with no regard to the truth, with no regard to checking the facts or fact checking or none of that. They just some media outlets are just doing it just to do it, just to make a quick buck and to boost their ratings. And that's the problem too within the media. But we're going to go into the media for another specific time frame. But
another thing we need to go into too, I forgot, foreign influence.
Russia.
We need to
stop that. Yeah, Russia and stop all that foreign influence and foreign intelligence, and they putting their outlets and stuff like that. We need to stop that too. Crack down on that.
Media outlets on social media.
Yeah, they influencing that too.
If you get your information from social media, you need to stop right now. Social media, that's not a media outlet.
Yeah. That is people's opinion.
Entertainment platform.
It's an entertainment platform. It's most likely it's people's opinion. It's their opinion. It's not fact. Fact check. Go on news outlets. Research news articles. Do your research. Google it. You believe in the power of Google? Google.
Use your Google machine. Google all this stuff.
Yeah.
And find credible media.
Yeah. Credible sources. Yeah.
Don't go to blogs, gossip.
Yeah, and gossip and all that stuff, like TMZ and all those other sources. I can't stand those. I can't stand those. So basically, to conclude this podcast, Tyler, thank you for being on this podcast. We're going to do a segment next time where we're going to talk about the WAP and the hookup culture. How it's not a dating culture, but it's a hookup culture. And how that WAP view is influencing people. So this concludes the Abday podcast on the Black Revolution. Thank you for being a guest, Tyler. And I hope to see you next time, brother. You're welcome, my brother. And hope we can talk to you about next time about the WAP video. So this concludes the Abday podcast.
It's going to be an interesting one.
Yeah, it really is. I can't wait to discuss it. All right, this is Abday. It's Tyler Kidd Klutch Productions. We're signing off.